we got was far beyond anything that I thought we would see from the women. I was pretty sure we were going to see Thunder Rosa bleeding. I did not expect that we would have Britt Baker also. She was bleeding a lot. It was insane.
Yeah, it was surprising. Like you said, I wasn't sure what to expect in terms of the blood. I kind of figured we would be getting like a standard hardcore match. Like I was kind of thinking some chairs, a table or two. But I was not expecting thumbtacks or blood or, man, I tell you what, this is what's really funny about this. The most ironic thing about it is that one of the mantras that you heard repeated a few different times during Revolution and people, talking about that kind of dud fireworks explosion was that AEW had overpromised and underdelivered. And I felt like this was the complete opposite. This was, marketed well, though not, no one said, hey, someone's going to die. Like they didn't advertise it like that. They advertised it for what it was. And these women overachieved. Just absolutely incredible match. I know we'll get to it to the specific reviewing, but absolutely the takeaway from the show. And I tweeted something. Maybe I should have cleared it by you before I put it out there. The That's Wrestling Twitter. But I tweeted out a meme of it's the "You can't change my mind," and I basically said this lights out match was better than the Revolution main event. Change my mind, and I firmly believe that.
It was, yeah. I guess up until if you nix everything that happened after the pin of Revolution, I think that as a match was better, but as a whole, this worked better.
Yeah, I think this was honestly very incredible. And like I said, AEW flipped the script here, and they, again, I don't want to say they underpromised, but they just kind of put out there what it was, and these women overachieved. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get this set up and we'll just get into this show because so much happened. You're watching the That's Wrestling podcast or listening to it. If you are listening to this as a podcast, we do this show live over on YouTube and on Twitch, and our YouTube got screwed up once again, so we're on a different stream than what was originally sent out, so that's of course a problem. But anyways, we are live, so if you're listening to this as a podcast, over to Twitch. That seems to be the premiere at this point. YouTube, you can see the replays over on YouTube. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, you can send those to Eric at that'swrestling.com. You can follow us on Twitter at That's Wrestling 1 with the number 1. We have been upping our Twitter game a little bit, so we're actually using it. So there's that. There's also a Discord link in the show notes as well if you want to come hang out with us. So if you are listening to this as a podcast, the link to the Twitch and the YouTube channels are in there as well. And once again, I have back Caleb Johnson. And I think, we got one more week with you, and then you're off for a little bit.
Yeah, this is it. This is the final show that I am going to be here for a little while anyways. As our listeners may know, I finished up training for a new job with the government. So I'm moving from the DC area to Tennessee, headed to Knoxville, Tennessee. Really excited about it. And it seems like a good place for... well, a little bit of everything. It sounds like from what I can tell that there's kind of a little bit of a wrestling community there as well. So I'll try to get involved with that. Been scoping out some of the local nerdy places. But yeah, so unfortunately due to the move and starting a new job and everything, I'll be out for a few weeks at least.
All right. Yeah, so I'm going to have to find a replacement. I don't know who's going to be replacing you yet, so I guess... we will see. So let's get into the show here, and I actually don't have my notes up, but it did start with Penta versus Cody Rhodes. I did not think they were going to do this off the beginning. So that was something. And actually, before that, they actually showed MJF and company arriving in a private jet and getting in a limo. So they're riding high, and we'll hear from them later. So Penta, he had a inset that he says he's going to break Cody's arm, and that he's going to have an early paternity leave. So there's that. And we have the match, which I thought was a decent match, but it went a lot differently than I thought it would. And then I have some qualms about how they finished the match, mostly because of a finish later on in the show. So I'm not sure if it was the later on finish or if it's this finish that made me more mad. So we have Penta. He doesn't even let Cody get into the ring before attacking him on the stage. And then we have them brawling on the floor, brawling in the ring. And this is really just a fight for a good portion of it. Penta hits a backstabber off the second rope, sets up a piece of barricade leaning up against the barricades on the outside. Cody hits a top rope Rana at one point where they're both standing, and Penta then starts to attack the shoulder of Cody Rhodes, which is all taped up and has been a problem and is actually a legit problem as well. So hopefully that does not become a permanent problem or a problem where he's going to have to be out for a long amount of time. I'm guessing he's just kind of holding on until basically paternity leave, and then he's going to rehab it, and hopefully it will heal on its own, because it would really suck if he had to have surgery. But even then, if he's going to go out on paternity leave, he might as well have surgery for it while he is out. Penta gets sent to the outside, and Cody hits a dive, sending Penta through the propped up barricade that he had set up on his own. Cody hits a destroyer and then a Cody cutter, but only gets a 2 count. Cody hits a backpack driver for a 2. Cody pulls Penta down to the mat and pulls him towards the ring post and bounces Penta's knee off of it. Back in the ring, Cody puts on a figure 4. Penta gets to the ropes. Cody tries to put on the figure 4 once again, but Penta grabs Cody. He ties him up, hits his arm breaker, and then when he goes to pick up Cody, Cody rolls up Penta and gets the pin victory. Too bad they messed up the pin, though, because only one of Penta's arms was trapped under Cody's leg. So, like, Penta's I think it was his left arm. Penta's left arm was actually leaning on top of Cody's leg, so he could easily have just, lifted his arm in the air and he would have been fine. After the match, though, Penta attacks Cody, and we have Dustin and the Gun Club running in to make the save. And as Penta is making his way out, QT Marshall is slow to the party. Dustin and company are yelling, "Where the hell were you? What was taking so long?" And that was the end of this segment. What do you think about the match, and what do you think about the ending?
Well, here's the thing. Now, granted, I tuned in late, so I didn't see the very beginning of it. I did not expect Cody to win. Like, I really felt like they were getting behind Death Triangle here. And I mean, I understand that Rey Fenix and Pac are kind of operating a little bit separately right now. And, Penta has kind of been doing not his own thing, but he's been doing this little bit here for the last week or two with Cody and also Alex Abrahantes. And also, side note, I like this team up. If they are, Death Triangle doesn't work if you don't have a triangle, because like Death straight line between Pac and Phoenix as a tag team wouldn't necessarily work. So Penta has to be the third guy. But if they get like Alex on board here, this Penta and Alex thing I really like with him translating, and like Alex just gets to talk crap to people. I think that's actually kind of fun. So for that, like those purposes, I like this duo. But yeah, I didn't expect Pac to win this. I'm sorry, I didn't expect Cody to win this. I really thought that we're angling up for a big Penta feud. And I mean, like you said, the match is fine. But I don't know. This just felt a little different, a little off to me, I guess. And it was perfectly fine as an opener. You know what I mean? It's no big deal. It's nothing egregious. But it is just not what I expected. And we'll see where it goes. We'll see what happens. But overall, it was a perfectly satisfactory opening. And I honestly don't have much to say about it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the fluky ending that was. I mean, they're trying to protect. I mean, you gotta one of these guys has to lose. So how are you going to do it? So I guess the fluky ending makes the most sense to protect as much as you can Penta taking the loss here.
But I mean, can't Cody just lose?
Yeah, that was what I was kind of. It was weird because it's like Cody could easily lose this at this point. Cody can lose matches and it's not going to harm him at all. And it's not like he's in the TNT title picture. He's not in the World Championship picture. So I'm not sure what this win does for him. And I figure that Penta, well, it could be leading to a rematch, and then Penta, that is where he permanently takes out, or I guess temporarily takes out Cody, and that's how they write him off TV. I thought that's what they were doing this week, but that is not what they ended up doing.
Yeah, I just want to see the full support of AEW behind Death Triangle, honestly. Like, the fact that they are getting the win. They won the tag team battle royal and are getting a shot at the Young Bucks. Like, I wanted to see them at full power. And to be honest, like, this is a faction, I guess you call it a faction, 3-man tag team of, like, there's not a single person in this team that you're like, oh, they're kind of the odd man out, right? They're kind of the weak link. Like, none of them are the weak link. All three of them are killers. And, like, I just wish that we kept all of them strong together as a unit. I mean, unless this is going down a certain storyline, but it didn't feel that way. It didn't feel like this is a storyline of, Penta can't get a win against Cody. Like, it just feels like Cody won for unknown reasons. And I say that as Cody being one of my favorite wrestlers. So I'm kind of thrown by this. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I'm not like precluding anything, and I don't want to cast harsh judgment on something that truthfully is not I mean, it wasn't the main event, right? It was the opener. Right. Like, they're jerking the curtain. So it really, to me, is fine. Like, these kind of stakes would matter more if it was later in the show and it's higher on the card. But I also think that this is kind of a tool that they used this week to forward the Nightmare Family storyline.
Right.
And it's just unfortunate for me that it was Penta.
Yeah, and I think it would make most sense to keep Death Triangle strong, even with Penta not being the one going after the tag titles, because most likely they are not going to be winning that match anyways. So it would make sense just to keep them strong going into that match.
Right.
And then that's where they take their loss. And again, yeah, Cody doesn't need the win, so I don't know what. All right, so we move on, and we are with Alex Marvez backstage with the Bucks. Matt mentions that he's asked about their mentality going into their upcoming matches. Matt talks about how Fenix may have beaten him in singles competition and may have beaten Nick last year in singles competition, but they're the tag team champions, and they're looking at the best damn tag team in professional wrestling. Don Callis butts in and says, "That sounds great. Sounds like you actually believe it." And he gives the Bucks a no leg slapping t-shirt, which I thought was funny. They mentioned that Callis was faking being beaten up by the Bucks a while back, and Don says, "Yeah, well, I did want you to kick me though, because I want to see that team that I saw in Japan." He says that these guys found the place that's all elite wrestling, but there's nothing elite about you anymore. They talk about how Kenny has changed, and Dawn says, of course he's changed. He's the god of pro wrestling now, and he's way up here, putting his hand high up and saying, you guys are down somewhere in the basement. Kenny doesn't even recognize you because you are not elite anymore. You're just a tag team with fancy tights living off your name. When you look in the mirror at night, do you see the same Nick and Matt that I saw in New Japan? Think about that. And then he walks off.
Don Callis is the best. I love Don Callis. Like, even like when he's being not I don't want to say that he's ever bad, but like even when he's not, like sometimes you can tell he's, maybe like I've heard him stumble on a line here and there, but it's just the confidence and the attitude behind him. Like he could come out and like cut some really weird promo that doesn't make any sense, but that he's just so convicted about it. You know what I mean? So much conviction. So I actually really, really love him. And yeah, that's all I have to say about this. Man, it does call back a little bit though to like the whole Young Bucks thing, and we'll talk about it a little bit later because it did come into play. But it's just that the Young Bucks have been so wishy-washy a little bit here, and you get these tones of like, whose side are they on? Kind of, are they with their old friends? But they never really committed to that, and because of that, there's a little bit of an angle later on that hits less hard because they never really fully committed to being part of this group. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, the night that they super kicked Varsity Blondes to save, who was it, Omega? That should have been the beginning of the heel, or at least of a heel-ish. Like, and they don't have to go full heel turn, but they have to be supporting their buddies. And if their buddies are being heels, then they got to get with it. And they never did. They never fully committed to being good or bad, essentially. And now, like, these tensions and the things that happen later in the show, like, they just hit way weaker because there was never a committal to, like, hey, we're part of this group now.
Right. Yeah, I guess wishy-washy is definitely the way to put it. I would definitely agree with you on that. All right, we move on. Jade Cargill is in action. She is facing Dani Jordan. Oh, I'm so mad they jobbed out Dani Jordan, although she's been jobbing on everywhere. But yeah, I'm so bummed because I love Dani so much.
I tweeted about this one too, and I was like, "R.I.P. Dani deserves better than to job to Jade."
Yeah, Dani. Yeah, I've been a fan of Dani since she first showed up the first time in Dynamite, and I forgot who she had a match against, but she looked really good in it. And yeah, just a bummer because I think she could be a fun character on Dynamite more often. Though this is her first match on Dynamite in I think the lower third said like 460 some odd days. It's like, ouch! I didn't know it was that long since seeing Dani on Dynamite.
Yeah, Dani, honestly, in my opinion, should be occupying some of the spots by like currently taken by like Red Velvet and even Layla Hirsch. Like maybe not winning all the time, but definitely like getting something in, you know what I mean? Like she was a jobber in this match, and she should be like getting something. I think they're kind of getting behind. AEW's kind of getting behind. Well, Anna Jay's injured now, but Anna Jay and Ty Conti were both really kind of getting a little bit of push, a little support. Getting wins on Dark, maybe not TV time on Dynamite all the time, but they're getting something. And she got nothing in this match, so I was really upset by that because I think Dani is of that caliber and better. I think she could do more than what they're showing.
So Jade, they lock up. Dani gets pushed into the ropes, and Jade just kind of throws her leg in the air and takes out Dani. She hits a German suplex, almost kills Dani because she threw her way too much force and over rotated her. And then Jade hits the face buster that they are calling Jaded, and that was it.
Which also, I don't hate that either. I know that you're not big on Jade, but like Jaded is not a terrible name for that move.
No, I'm fine with the name. I just don't like Jade.
I'm fine with the name.
This really didn't show anything from Jade. Well, I did not. The throwing the leg up in the air was kind of, and she almost killed Dani with a German suplex. So 2 of the 3 moves were not very well executed.
Her Carmella kick was not great.
And then Jade and Red Velvet have a little post-match yelling on the outside where Velvet was in the crowd. A little bit of scuffle right there, but that was about it. Jay says 3 moves and some poses. Yeah, she posed a lot too.
Tons of poses actually. She should be working in Japan with some of the Joshi wrestlers who are taking their time posing all the time and doing funny little whatevers, because that's exactly what she did here. And also, I got to throw this there. They really commentary threw Dani way under the bus, not because they're degrading her, but they said this is Jade's second ever match. They're like, her first ever, and they said it multiple times, her first ever wrestling match was last week or 2 weeks ago with Shaq, and this is her second ever match. And I'm like, so you're going to say that Dani gets thrashed by someone who doesn't wrestle? That's some hardcore burial, and I was unhappy about it.
We move on to the superstar promo of the night. Every time MJF cuts something on the mic, it's been really good, and this just shows he is just a cut above everybody, especially given his experience level compared to basically everybody. There's not too many people that cut a better promo than he does.
That's it's funny the way you say it, but it's true. It's like, wow, MJF is better than everyone, considering the fact that he's been doing it a lot less than everyone. You know what I mean? Or less long than everybody. Like, of everyone on the roster, his pro wrestling experience is not compared to everyone, let's say. Like, I mean, there are some people here who have been wrestling. Maki Ito's been wrestling 3 or 4 years. But I mean, MJF is 24. So like, there are people on this show who have wrestled for 24 years. And this guy's 24 years old. And he's the best promo in this company. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got a little competition. That came out of my mouth a little too quickly. Moxley, Kingston, MJF, probably my top 3 right there.
So MJF and company come out to the ring. Tully starts off, says that it's great being in the middle of this ring with this great group of guys. He says last week they were in the ring with the former greatest group of guys in AEW. That was until they got beaten down. Santana and Ortiz handcuffed over here. Jake Hager with 2 champagne bottles to the head over here. Sammy with a chair around his neck over there. And then right here, their leader, the great Chris Jericho, is laid out. MJF taking a bat to him. He says, I guess now that makes it that 34 years ago I was with the greatest group of guys, and I'm going to finish my career with the greatest group of guys. So putting over the team that has been put together here. MJF takes the mic. He says that it wasn't easy pretending to be Jericho's friends for all those past months. He makes a fat joke, makes a receding hairline joke. He says that he never wanted to take over the inner circle. It was just a ruse so he could destroy it from the inside and build his own stronger group. And they're calling themselves the Pinnacle. He compliments all the guys, says Wardlow is the best big man and the best insurance policy wrestling has to offer. Says Shawn Spears has been held down for too long. He's going to prove that he's a top guy. FTR is the greatest tag team on God's green earth. And then MJF himself, he says that he's only been on national TV for a year, but he's the most talked about wrestler in the business today. He says that he's only 24 years old and has 25 more years left in the tank, which is funny because he was actually 25 at the time this aired. So he was 24 when he cut the promo because it was recorded last week, but he was 25 when it aired because he had a birthday in between. Says that it's all over for when it's all said and done, when his career is over. Jericho won't be the greatest of all time, he said the GOAT. MJF will be. He says the Pinnacle, we're here, we're going to take what we want. And he says, I think I'll start off with Inner Circle's locker room. And Chris, I'm better than you, and you know it. That was a summed up of what he said. That's not word for word, but that was the sum of what he said.
You missed one line that, and of course, no fault to you, because I mean, it was a very long promo, but there was one line that actually really got me when he said, "Chris, I pretended to like your comedy BS." And I was like, yes, mean, aggressive MJF, because MJF, like, let's not forget, he was half of Les Dinner Debonair. Like, one of the weirdest, like, most controversial, in a sense, wrestling segments in a very long time. And he, I mean, behind the scenes, like, at a kayfabe, like, I guarantee you part of this was his idea. It was hilarious. Like, I loved it. I know we talked about it a little bit when it happened. There were people, more traditional wrestling reviewers and critics who, called it the dumbest thing they'd ever seen in their entire lives. But this is the MJF that I wanted out of this, right? We didn't want an Inner Circle repeat, because Inner Circle, for all their, their fun, they do a lot of, like, not comedy, but like funny or like unintentionally funny sort of stuff. Like all of their war councils and their debates, and they really do kind of a lot of funny stuff. And like, we didn't know it when they debuted, but like, because they looked like this, crazy cool heel faction. But like with Chris Jericho as the leader, like they were inbound to do something humorous, right? And they have actually done quite a bit of funny stuff. So this is like the heel faction that will not break a smile, right? Mm-hmm. Like these guys are gonna just be killers. And I absolutely love that. I also liked that this promo was kind of a callback to the original Inner Circle promo with Chris Jericho, running down, every member of the group, kind of introducing you. Also, MJF reintroducing himself, because this is kind of a character change for him, right? Like, even though he is still himself and he'll certainly be the same old MJF, there is going to be less comedy. There's going to be a little less, nods and winks, I think, in this group. So this was an incredible promo. MJF, like I said, he's in my opinion one of the top 3 in this company.
So we'll see how this goes with the Pinnacle. We will see if they make good on figuring out how to make Shawn Spears a top guy. I'm thinking he's going to be more of a fall guy than a top guy.
Oh, I almost forgot. What do you actually think about the name The Pinnacle?
I guess we'll see. I mean, it's the same as the Inner Circle. It grew on me, so now it's normal. I think anytime you name a new group, you got to let it sit with you for a little bit, and it's only been 24 hours, so I don't know. We'll see how it comes. I think it will come out as a fine name.
Okay. Right now I'm feeling a little okay, fine. But you know what? The Inner Circle grew on me too. That's a good point. Because when they said the Inner Circle, I was like, that's cheesy. And now, of course, the Inner Circle is what we know them as. And we love them for it. So the only other thing I want to actually ask you too about the Pinnacle is, wouldn't it have been cool if they were called the Revelation? Because that's what Tully always says, was fear the revelation, which is FTR. And I know FTR is kind of their thing, but if they're going to be a part of the group anyway, why couldn't have we called this group the Revelation? And that's what he was hinting at the whole time when he said fear the revelation.
Yeah, that could have worked, I guess.
Just a thought.
Yeah, it's too late now.
Too late now. They're the Pinnacle.
Next up, we have a 10-man tag. It is Matt Hardy, Butcher Blade, Private Party versus Jurassic Express and Bear Country. Is this their first thing on Dynamite? Bear Country?
Their first, if you want to not include the tag team battle royale from Revolution, I think this is their first Dynamite appearance.
All right, so Marco and Matt started off. Marco baits Hardy into his friendly corner. Jungle Boy tags in at that point. Marco does a crossbody off the top, and Matt Hardy catches him, and Jungle Boy hits a missile drop kick into Marco's back while he's being held by Hardy. We have a full breakdown where everybody attacks everybody. Hardy and company get sent to the outside. Bear Country then toss Marco onto Hardy, the Hardy Empire, who is on the floor. And oh my god, Marco needs to buy the Butcher anything he wants because that's the only reason Marco is still alive, because he got thrown way too far and Butcher managed to just like grab his shirt and rein him in because he was going head first directly towards the barricade in a downward motion. And that's the only thing that saved him, is that he managed to spin him enough that Marco's head did not smash right into the top of the with all of his force.
Yes. This, I just think Bear Country probably just hasn't had enough ring time with them. But, like, I guarantee you Marco weighs even less than we think he does. Like, when you look at him, you're just like, oh, that's a small dude. But, like, I bet you throwing him, for guys that size, they just don't. I mean, they know their own strength. They just don't know how small Marco really is. So, I mean, when they threw him, they really threw him.
And it was a double team throw. So probably if it was just one of them, they could estimate it a lot better than having two people put power into it. So you're like, I don't know how much I'm supposed to add into this equation. And but yeah, Marco could have been killed on television last night.
Which I feel like is probably not the first or last time we're ever going to say that, because Marco is a very small person in the ring with some very large people.
Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus are not happy about Bear Country throwing Marco. They have a little bit of a disagreement. The match starts to get back in order, though. They get the heat on Jungle Boy for quite some time. In the fight feed, this commentary should have been on the actual show outside of just the fight feed, because they were talking about Butcher and Blade teaming up with Matt Hardy and mentioning that Butcher and Blade were mercenaries when they first came into AEW, so they still are. This was something that like confused a lot of people last week. On a lot of podcasts that I listened to. It's like, well, Butcher and Blade are mercenaries. They've been mercenaries basically the whole time. They only teamed up with Kingston for a little bit because they were his friend, but they're still going to go to the highest bidder, so that's what happened.
Yeah, 100%. I think that could have been emphasized a little bit more, like you said. But I mean, at the same time, like that's what a mercenary is, folks. Like that's the idea, is that you pay them and then they are your hired muscle. So if Hardy's paying and he's big money Matt, then this actually makes a ton of sense. Because if you're going to cast Butcher and Blade as mercenaries and you're going to cast Matt as having a lot of money, that's like a match made in heaven.
Post commercial, Luchasaurus gets the hot tag. He wipes out everybody of the Hardy Empire. Cassidy gets hit with a tail whip kick, choke slammed, gets a standing moonsault for a 2 count. Butcher comes in, takes out Luchasaurus. Marco runs in and does a hit and run on Butcher, and we get more disagreements with Bear Country and Jurassic Express about who's supposed to be tagged in. The legal man from Bear Country was close enough that Marco tagged himself in by pie-facing him, basically. And Butcher and Blade then fight the rest of Jurassic Express and Bear Country out on the outside while Marco gets destroyed. He gets hit with gin and juice from Private Party. Matt Hardy wants the tag in, of course, so before Quen can cover, Quen does tag in Hardy. Hardy picks up Marco, gives him the twist of fate, covers him for the win. This time kind of funny because now Private Party are on board with Matt Hardy's heel tendencies, so now they're not even like mad about Hardy stealing the pin.
Yeah, in a kind of a weird way, I like that. I was like, that's some continuity right there. That's kind of neat, because now they're heels and they're like, whatever, man. So like he reaches for the tag, and I thought they like just maybe instinctively, I thought they were gonna, have a little bit of a dispute or something, because that's kind of a heelish thing to do, and that's what's been happening or had been happening. But when he did that, they just kind of smiled and tagged him in, and I was like, oh right, that's like minor, kind of subtle storytelling development. So good for them. I thought that was a really cool. A cool move. And also, I expected that pin to get broken up, to be honest. Where was everyone? They were just like arguing with Bear Country when the camera zoomed out, which is fine, but like your guy's getting pinned. Your little Marco, like, get in there, man. Like, I don't care if you're, in a disagreement, because as soon as they zoomed out, once the pin had been counted, it was just Jungle or Jurassic Express on the outside just arguing. So I was like,
they were fighting with Butcher and Blade.
Oh, they were?
Yes, Butcher and Blade was over there as well.
Oh, okay.
So they were fighting with Bear Country and Butcher and Blade.
Okay. Okay, I didn't realize Butcher and Blade were over there too. It made them seem a little dumb, but now that Butcher and Blade was over there keeping them occupied, I can see why.
Yep. Next up, we had Moxley and Eddie Kingston. This promo was awesome. I can't even cover basically everything that they said because it was so fast. They were talking quickly. They were talking over each other constantly, changing directions based on what the other person was saying. So, hey, look at that. A promo that the people in it are acknowledging what the other person says, and that directs the conversation, regardless if the point prior was made or not.
Yes, exactly. And also, people talking over each other, because, don't do it all the time, guys, but, there are wrestling companies out there, wink, wink, looking at you, you know who, but there are people out there when these wrestling promos happen, they're supposed to be, a heel and a face in each other's, face, trying to really get aggressive, trying to get them riled up. And they just sit there and politely listen and hear them out before coming back with their articulated, rebuttal. And I'm like, come on, this is an argument. Get in there, start talking over each other, get some, and these guys are on each other's side, and they still start talking over each other. They're trying to make points because they're both a little bit of kind of loudmouths, So I think that their dynamic together is really, really good, and I really liked their first promo together. It was great, but this one was even better. I really like the two of them together. And if they keep them as a tag team for a little while, I would fully support it.
I want a Jon Moxley, Eddie Kingston reality TV show where they just follow these two around.
That'd actually be pretty good too.
Moxley says he's not in a good mood. He's going to war again. He's got to deal with the real problem, and that is the Good Brothers. They make fun of the Good Brothers, say they're cheap shot artists, says Gallows has googly eyes, and then the tangent when they go off on the googly eyes was hilarious. They make fun of the Good Brothers using the too sweet. Eddie's like, I thought I saw that on TNT 25 years ago. Eddie says that AEW is their home. It's not the Good Brothers' home. Say the Good Brothers are cowards. Mox and he are soldiers. This promo was excellent.
Yes, absolutely excellent. Two great guys in the ring. They also, I thought there was a funny little nod when Eddie almost said Bullet Club, and Mox is like, we can't say Bullet Club. And he was like, can we not? And they're like, well, the forbidden door's open. And they just kind of looked at each other like, should we say Bullet Club? And I thought that was a funny little moment. But yeah, these guys are awesome. And then at the end, Eddie was quoting some rappers. It's some rap lyrics. I can't remember exactly who the artists were. I think one was Tupac and one was, I can't remember who the other one was.
I think.
Yeah, and they were really good lyrics. And I was just like, man, he really is subtle, but also very effective with his character development. And you're like, yeah, of course, Eddie, raised in the streets, basically, like a fighter, right? What is he going to associate whatever he's going through with? Whatever music he listened to, you know what I mean? That's just a little bit of realism there that makes me really happy. So I thought this was a really, really fun promo.
We go to commercial. When we come back from commercial, we have Dasha with Christian Cage. And so Christian Cage speaks. She asks what brought him to AEW. Christian says, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but I promise I'm going to answer your question. Christian says that there's a term in the wrestling business for the type of wrestler that goes into the ring on a nightly basis and busts their ass every night. They're called a workhorse. He says people know his reputation. I make other wrestlers level up. I'm not a workhorse. I'm the workhorse. He says that there's only one spot that interests him, and that spot is currently occupied by Kenny Omega. He says he knows he has to get some wins under his belt, but he will see Omega down the road, and Kenny is on borrowed time. He says he came to AEW to cement his legacy and outwork everybody. That was the end of the promo. I wish he said why he came to AEW, he included that he wanted to take on the best, and it wasn't just to cement a legacy.
Oh, you mean like you think that could have been like hey, AEW is the best of the best kind of thing?
Yeah, like he wants to prove that he's one of the best. Something along those lines, and not just say, I want to cement my legacy and outwork everybody. One, he's going to have to start working soon if he's going to want to outwork everybody. I hope this catchphrase is not setting up for failure, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think I'm taking a little bit more of a cautiously optimistic kind of approach here. I definitely think that this is going to turn out to be good. I think that he's, obviously very proven in ring. I think his promos are some of the areas where people may have critiqued Christian in the past. But I thought he was very good here. He was definitely a little bit measured. You could tell he was kind of thinking through what he was saying and making sure that he got it out correctly. Not that he's overthinking it, but I could tell he was pacing himself. But I will say, like, I'm not this is growing on me. You know what I mean? When Revolution happened, I think a lot of people were disappointed at who this big signing was. And I'm not. I obviously was thinking it was going to be a little bit bigger than it ended up being. But I also think that they clearly have, found something with Christian. And I think he's there for a reason. And I'm not upset with the cement my legacy. I mean, he has worked in, two of the other, at the time, biggest companies in North America. And now it's time to be here and to really, I think, finish out his career. So I was okay with this. I kind of think that his story makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not down on that line. I would just like it added in that he wants to take on the best, and that would lead to doing so would cement his legacy. That type of thing. So no, I'm not trying to sound down on this promo. The promo was good. Just a few little tweaks I think would have made it better. I don't know if he is coming off too much as, walking in with a giant chip on his shoulder, like I'm better than the rest of you type. I don't know if he's going to be a heel or a face at this point. That's kind of a thing too. Like, I'm not sure where he's going, just because the delivery was kind of riding that line on each side, feeling a little egotistic, conceited type of deal, but not as blatant as like an MJF type of obviously ego trip.
Yeah, I think the fact that he has already come out and, picked up the belt in the ring that Kenny dropped and has, again, in this promo mentioned targeting Kenny Omega, to me, that solidifies him as a face. I think that he's presenting himself as he is kind of cocky a little bit, but I do think that just the situation, the way that they've basically displayed him to us, it screams face to me.
All right, we have the match of Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston versus the Good Brothers. As Eddie Kingston is coming out of the tunnel, the Good Brothers attack him from behind. So Moxley has to run in from the side where he usually enters from to join the fight. Though it doesn't take much time before the Good Brothers are basically beating the crap out of Moxley on the floor. The four of them brawl on the floor around ringside for a little bit. Good Brothers hit a magic killer on Moxley on the floor. Anderson throws Kingston into the ring, and then the bell rings. Like, the ref didn't even check, like, on Kingston to be like, would you like to start the match? Like, are you ready to start the match? That type of deal. He just kind of rang the bell. It's inconsistent whether if a pre-match beatdown where they ask if they want to continue, if they want to start the match or not, and sometimes they just do it. Oh well. Good Brothers use a lot of heel tactics against Kingston, gouging the eyes, attacking his nose. They just keep beating on him. It felt like forever they got the heat on Kingston. Moxley is just out on the floor still. Gallows hits a high kick to the head. Moxley has finally made his way up to his corner, and as soon as he finally stands up in his corner, he eats a bicycle kick. He gets knocked off the apron again. The beating on Kingston continues. Moxley back up on the apron, but Eddie just continues to take a beating. Eventually, he hits an exploder on Anderson to make a little bit of space, finally gets to Moxley. Moxley takes down Carl Anderson, hits him with a German suplex, shotgun dropkick, sending him into the corner. He knocks Gallows down on the outside a few times when Gallows tries to get involved while still out on the apron. It's a really high-speed running lariat and then a pile driver. Doc's Gallows has to break up the pin. Moxley hits Gallows with a jumping knee. Gallows rolls to the outside. Mox hits him with a dive, gets back into the ring. Anderson hits him with a spine buster for a 2 count. Gets some double teaming from the Good Brothers on both Moxley and Kingston. Good Brothers set up Magic Killer. Kingston interrupts, sends Gallows to the outside, and Kingston drags gets dragged to the outside as well. So Gallows and Kingston are fighting on the outside. Back in the ring, Anderson goes to pick up Moxley. Moxley just grabs him, rolls him up, and gets the win. So this is the second roll-up, like, fluke victory type of deal in this show, and that kind of bothered me a little bit. I don't know, again, just like I don't know why Cody couldn't have just taken a straight loss, I don't know why Anderson couldn't just taken a straight loss here either.
I think the part of the reason for Anderson not taking a straight loss, if I'm being honest, I think part of that is them losing the Impact tag team titles. Spoiler alert, if you guys aren't caught up on Impact, probably should have said that first. The new Impact tag team champions, Finn Juice. So, 1, sweet. I'm very excited about that. But 2, I think that you want them to stay, like, sure, they could have taken a loss in AEW, but can they take a loss as a tag team right now after, losing, or at least a straight loss? Obviously, they lost this match. But, I mean, can they take something not as cheeky right now? And I would argue no. I would argue that their position in 2, possibly 3, depending on the New Japan companies or New Japan travel. But I mean, these are guys who could very easily be working in 3 different companies this year. And I know this is just a weekly review, a weekly Dynamite, nothing too big, but you do need to kind of keep them strong, I think. So I was totally fine with this kind of pin. And to be honest, like, I didn't even think this was that fluky. This didn't feel as weird as the opener. I think a roll-up like that is totally fine, honestly. And I think it also continues it's not even a storyline. It's just, I guess, one of the aspects of Jon Moxley's character, which is that he's actually quite resourceful. Like, people might say that Mox is all about unscripted violence, like it says in his Titan. But to be honest, he's actually kind of a cerebral fighter. He takes a roll up when he can get it. He, uses submissions. So I actually was totally fine with this in this context. I mean, don't do this too much, but I think that they maybe couldn't take a straight loss right now. And also, it totally plays to Moxley's character that he's actually more opportunistic than anything.
So I guess that goes back to the Cody and Penta match. They should have had a solid finish for that if they're going to do this.
Yep, I can see that.
Good Brothers can beat down Moxley after the match. Kenny Omega's music hits. He comes out with Don Callis. Kenny's carrying a chair. He sets it up in the ring. He sits in it. Kingston runs in and knocks him out of the chair. So Good Brothers beat the crap out of Kingston, hit him with a magic killer. Kenny grabs the chair. And they Pillmanize Eddie's leg while Moxley can only watch. So Kingston is taken out of the ring. He's laid out on the outside. They put the chair around Moxley's neck. Looks like they're going to Pillmanize his neck. And before they do, the Young Bucks run out to stop them. They all argue. Good Brothers and Kenny, They want a too sweet. The Bucks start walking off. Nick gets out of the ring, but before Matt can get out of the ring, Kenny grabs him by the shirt, spins him around, and he's yelling at him. He wants Matt to give him a too sweet, and Matt just turns his back and walks out. And Moxley gets a little bit of a burst of energy. He comes swinging the chair. Kenny and the Good Brothers run away. So here we have a clear division, or a clearer division, of the Young Bucks and Good Brothers and Kenny Omega. So it looks like we're going for a full split at this point.
Again, I mentioned it earlier, but this could have hit a lot better if we had ever really seen the Bucks commit to this faction or this group. Really, it doesn't even have to be a faction. Like, I'm actually totally fine with them not calling themselves a faction, calling themselves Bullet Club. You know, like, this is totally great. It's Kenny and his buddies, essentially. And they just never had the Bucks really commit to being part of this group on any form of media. They never on BTE, never on, or at least to my viewing, I don't think they ever really fully committed to it. So, like, this was almost like, you know, a turn, kind of turning their backs, but it just didn't hit as well. And I was kind of disappointed by that, really. That said, I mean, it's still good. Like, I mean, I do like when the Bucks came out, I was like, whoa, like I was actually kind of not impressed, but surprised. I was like, wow, that's kind of neat that they're coming out. And I actually really like the interplay, as, you know, Kenny Omega really asserting himself as, like, because, you know, he would say, oh, we're all friends. We're friends from Japan, this and this and that. But at the end of the day, like, when Matt walks away, he asserted himself. Like, he grabbed him. He said, you're going to too sweet me, basically. Right. And I thought that was really good. It just, and that's why I keep saying it could have hit harder, because it did hit me. I was like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty good. But it definitely didn't have the value or the resonance that it could have.
They better not go back to being all wishy-washy. We need a hard divide at this point.
Correct. 100%.
And if they continue to be wishy-washy, then this segment was for naught once again.
Yep.
For the 16th week in a row, Tony calls out to try to talk to Sting. He has Darby Allin come out as well. Tony says it was a hell of a match between Darby and Scorpio Sky, and no one expected what happened after the match, that Scorpio Sky, trying to injure Darby. Darby says that he won the championship on November 7th, 2020, and he's only defended it 3 times. That's just a joke. And now that everything's done with Team Taz, he wants to be a defending champion week in and week out. And he says, in honor of the greatest TNT championship, Dark Order, if you want this back, it's an open challenge. Lance Archer interrupts. Go figure. Says, week after week, how many times are you going to try to interview Sting? Says he doesn't care if he's taking up time because it should be his time all the time. Calls Darby the most indie-rific joke the business has ever seen. Says, you like coffins so much, I'm going to put your ass in one. So are we going to get Lance Archer versus Darby Allin?
I think we are, but also Lance keeps coming out of the face tunnel, and he's not acting like a face.
Nope.
And also Darby's a face, and Lance is not going to be the face in that match.
Right.
And if you think I've said face a lot, it's because I'm mimicking Lance Archer, who has said time a lot lately. So I'm going to say face. But, like, someone's got to be the heel and someone's got to be the face in that match. And there's no way that it's going to be Lance Archer. So, this all... are you going to say any more about this? Because I'm going to vent about this for a sec.
I was going to continue on the segment, but if you have something specific...
No. Go for it. When you're done, I got to vent about it.
Okay, so Jake cuts in here and gives the most wacky line, like, ever. He says, Darby is going to freeze his ass off. He needs to go to the back and put his bun back on, your hot dog bun, because you're nothing but a weenie, boy. Like, what the hell does that mean? That was the most convoluted insult I have ever heard.
Yep.
So I just wrote here, okay, Jake. Jake says, Sting, you know me. You know what's coming to you. Says the winds of change are coming. This is the baddest guy here. And then, of course, Taz butts in. But Brian Cage grabs the mic from him and says, Taz, you're not speaking for me today. I have something to say, and it's not to Darby. It's to Sting. You showed up like some hot shot, and you stick your nose in our business week after week with all the back and forth and physicality and damnedest street fight in the business. I gotta say, I respect you. This makes Team Taz hot. They are all like, what are you talking about? And then he says, more importantly, I have to disagree with Ricky Starks. He's wrong. With or without the bat, you're still the icon. This makes the rest of Team Taz even more mad. They're yelling at him like, what the hell is wrong with you? I believe one of them said, what kind of pipe have you been smoking from? And Cage just walks through the rest of Team Taz and down the tunnel, and everybody departs.
All right. I'm going to throw this out there. This promo this whole segment was so busy. Like, there's so much, like, too much going on. 100%. That said, there was a lot of cool stuff in here. Like, it was such a mixed bag for me because I'm like, it starts off with Sting and Darby. First of all, I understand wanting to do the Sting thing, but Sting was really only out here for later for when Team Taz interrupts. So we really could have made this 2 segments because the Darby part, I liked Darby coming out there. Darby says, I've defended this 3 times. And when he said he defended it 3 times, I don't know if you noticed, the whole crowd like started cheering.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's a joke. And I was like, yeah, you tell him, Darby. Like, I was so excited when he said that. I was like, that's correct. Like, it is a joke. So, because I mean, obviously we are fans of the fighting champion. So he says that, and I'm like, yup, 100% on board so far. Like, we're doing good. And then when he said he was going to honor the greatest TNT champion of all time, did it sound like they were chanting Cody?
Some of them were, and some were chanting Brody.
Okay, because I heard Cody,
it was mixed.
And I was just like, oof, that's a little rough.
Like, and it was a planted crowd. So, guys, reshoot that or get some new background sound.
Yeah, and also, like, Cody and Brody sound similar, so I totally will understand if that's just my ears, but I thought I heard Cody. And then when he said Dark Order, open challenge, I was like, that. So I'm getting hyped, right? So I tweeted about this too. I was like, it was such a mixed bag for me because when he said that, I was like, that is so awesome. Like, I'm really excited. 1, an open challenge. Perfect. 2, tribute to Brody Lee / Dark Order. So I'm like, I'm feeling this at this point, right? Then they have to go and do the Lance Archer things. So I'm like, all right, dude, Jake Roberts, like, he needs to take a break, man. Like, he needs to chill out because he said, you need to go get your bun because you're a weenie. And I was like, are we 6? Like, is this the playground and I missed it? Like, I just feel like we're at Whitaker Elementary right down the, road from my house when I was 4 years old. And we're on the playground again because this is weird.
It's not even a good insult. It's like
not even a good insult.
You would be insulted for making that insult.
Did you see Darby's face? He
No.
turned away from him. Dude, he turned away from Jake Roberts when he was saying it, and he's literally just like dying inside. You could just see his whole face, like emotionless, like, oh my gosh. So that's like super weird with the Lance Archer interrupt. And then the Team Taz interrupt. Like, but what's great though is Brian Cage. Brian Cage did great in this promo, and I really like this little, I'm not calling this a full face turn, but it is a little something. It's a little tease. And I'm like, wow, that gave me something I never knew I wanted because Brian Cage really delivered in that moment. And I thought he's a pretty good actor too. Like, just his, mannerisms when he's talking to Sting. I was like, he's really, really delivering this. He's really selling it to me. And there was just way too much all in one segment. But the part about it that gets me is that there's like 3 or 4 things here that I really, really like. So mixed bag for me, man.
Yeah, so it sounds like we have a solidification of Lance as a heel after his short time as a babyface.
Yup, I'm on board with that.
We have what seems to be a face turn from Brian Cage.
I don't think it's full-fledged yet, but I think it's the beginnings of one, yes.
Exactly. So we have that as well. And then, of course, we have the open challenge from Darby Allin, and we have some inner strife within Team Taz because of what Brian Cage has said.
Yeah.
So we will see what comes of that.
Also, just one other note that you already mentioned, but Team Taz's reaction was perfect. Like, they were so hot when he said that. It made me really laugh. So good point pointing that out. Especially Starks. When he said Starks is wrong, he flipped out. He almost tried to grab him.
Yeah, and it was nice that Brian Cage carried the microphone back into the group and was holding it down at his waist. So it was catching everything that people were saying. And I love, well, what kind of smoke, what kind of pipe have you been smoking from? We have a short video package of Scorpio Sky, basically recapping his past few weeks and then attacking Darby Allin post-match, trying to break his ankle. In essence, at the end of it, he said, I'm not going to be a stepping stone, and if I have to hurt people to do so, then so be it.
Yep, totally fine.
Next up, we have Rey Fenix versus Angelico. Kind of a weird matchup. I'm not totally sure what would have prompted this match, but it was fine because they're both lucha style wrestlers, and
they do some good lucha things.
They did a lot of good lucha things, and it was actually kind of it went a little different than I thought. Again, given Rey Fenix, but he, of course, is very versatile, anyways. And it was a lot of submission and mat wrestling from these guys. Rey Fenix's back was taped up, and Angelico tears the tape off the lower back, and he attacks the back in various ways. Fenix makes a comeback. He spiked Angelico with a rolling cutter. I love how Angelico takes those cutters. And
100%.
Angelico tries the death roll, but Fenix immediately grabs the rope because he's right there. They exchange some kicks. Fenix hits a crucifix bomb and then hits apeshit and gets the victory.
Yep. Are we confirmed on that's what that's called in AEW?
No. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it's called outside of New Japan. Not totally sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. But yeah, I mean, totally fine. Like you said, this was one of the, no offense, guys, this was one of the bathroom break matches for me, especially as we were getting closer to the end of the show. I honestly on this one was like kind of sort of making sure to pay attention. And it was fine from what I saw.
All right, we have a backstage segment with Alex Marvez talking to Miro. Miro's doing some pull-ups. He then is asked about the challenge issued by Best Friends. He says that really, in the end, he has no interest with Charles anymore. That opportunity has moved on. Says that he has better things to do. Kip butts in, though, says that he's not ready to move on because they ruined his wedding, and Kip says he's a bit upset with Miro for pushing Orange Cassidy into Penelope, and, you know, she's hurt. Miro says the worst thing for Kip's career is having his wife out at ringside. That's a little funny inside baseball right there, given his past. He says he doesn't care about Kip or Penelope or any family drama. Once the bell rings, all he cares about is his destiny and that he needs to be world champion. Kip says that he wants that for him too. Miro says, well, we're still buds. And Miro walks off And Alex asks Kip if they accept the match, and Kip says, "Of course."
Yes, without Miro being in earshot, which was interesting. But honestly, this was like the first inklings that I've had of Miro in AEW where I was like, right, like now we're starting to get there. There's a little bit of this discord, a little bit. And also, to be honest, he said his destiny is to be world champion. And he said, I don't care about you or your wife or your wedding. And I was like, yes, come on. Like that's the best. I was 100% behind Miro in this whole promo.
See, what is going to come out of the match that they're about to have is what I thought was going to happen in the match they just had. And that is Kip is going to eat the pin, Miro is going to go crazy, and that's the end of this relationship. Yep. But yeah, that didn't happen at Revolution. They're pushing it off to here. If this is how it plays out and it finally goes that way, good, because that's about where we need to go at this point. And Miro just needs to be a heartless bastard and just he doesn't care about anybody. He even destroys his friend or his so-called friend, and all he cares about at this point is getting to the top.
100%, and that is, in my opinion, the right direction to go. So let's do it already.
They run down the card for next week, but in the middle of it, they cut to a backstage. Once again, Alex Marvez, he is with the Dark Order and asks who's going to be the person to take on Darby Allin next week for the TNT title. And out of the group comes -1 and says, it's going to be me! And Uno's like, hold up there, little buddy. Maybe in about 10 years. In the end, they decide it's going to be John Silver.
Yep, it's going to be Johnny Hungy, and I'm super excited about that. Also of note, everyone's wearing St. Patrick's Day gear, so they're all in green and looking hilarious. Yep. -1, dude. For a second, I was buying it. I was like, let's go. Come on, -1. You're not that much smaller than Darby anyway. And, but they were like, hold up, kid, maybe in a decade. And when they said that, like, I was really glad in a sense because I've had mixed feelings on -1's involvement here. He's grown on me a little bit here lately. But one of the things that not that I don't like, but that irks me a little bit is that it feels like Dark Order, like, actually like thinks of him as their leader and listen to him. And I'm like, it just feels a little unrealistic if you want the Dark Order to not completely be a comedy group, that they take orders from a child. So like when he comes out to walk out with like Ty Conti or with, 10 during a match, that's fine. But when he's up there like acting like he's directing traffic and telling them who to punch and what to do, that's what kind of gets me a little bit. So it was kind of refreshing when he was like, oh, I'll do it. And whoever it was, Uno or whoever, was just like, you're 9. And I was like, yeah, exactly. He is 9.
He needs to come out in some badass suits.
He does, yeah. His gear right now looks a little silly.
Yep. So they announce next week is going to be a rematch of Nyla Rose and Ty Conti. So that should be a good one. FTR and Sean Spears taking on Dante Martin and Varsity Blondes. Curious what's up with Darius. For some reason, I think he's injured. Does that mean both one person from the Acclaimed and Top Flight are injured? That's kind of
that. Man, I don't know if he's injured. I was kind of thinking it was weird that he wasn't totally, out there with them or going to be in the match. So I'd have to look it up.
Yeah. Darby Allin and John Silver for the TNT Championship. I am looking forward to that match. This should be a fun one. And then Matt Sydal versus Kenny Omega. This was set up on Dark Elevation, which I did not watch because they had like 13 freaking matches, and I was not going to watch 13 matches. And then they had 15 matches the next night on Dark. Okay, can we have pre-COVID Dark back where it's 3 matches and some character pieces and wrapped up in under an hour?
Yeah, Dark is getting really bloated.
So that was set up on Elevation. Matt Sydal beat Michael Nakazawa to earn a match against Kenny Omega. It's going to be a regular TV match, so 20-minute time limit. If Matt Sydal wins, then he gets a championship match against Kenny Omega. I don't see that going very far. We have a short segment with MJF removing the Inner Circle's dressing room sign, replacing it with the Pinnacle sign. So they have taken over their dressing room.
This was also just of note. I mean, it's a very small note, but this was the third thing that Pinnacle related on the show. They had them showing up. They had them doing their huge promo, obviously, and then they had them taking over the Inner Circle dressing room. So, I mean, not that we had any doubt, but they're definitely committing to this. Like, this is going to be a focal point. This, like, even just this small little bit with them taking over the dressing room made me realize that they are going to be a focal point of this show for the next however long.
Then we have the match that everybody is talking about, and this is Thunder Rosa versus Britt Baker in a lights out false count anywhere match. This was insane.
Yes, this was, in my opinion, better than the Revolution main event. 2, one of the best ladies matches I have seen. Man, I don't remember the last time. Like, the last time I saw a women's match, no offense AEW, the last time I saw a women's match this good was definitely WWE. And probably, I mean, this is comparable to some of the classic, like Becky Charlotte Evolution, the
Sasha Bailey.
Yeah, Sasha Bailey. Like, this is in that, top echelon of women's matches for me. I honestly, and I don't do this ever for our fans who have listened before. You might not know this yet. One thing that I tend to never do is go back and rewatch matches. Like, I enjoy wrestling as a weekly product, and I like to see the new changes, new things, but I rarely sit down and think like, I'm going to watch some wrestling. I'm going to watch something I have seen before. Because if I'm sitting down to watch wrestling, it's either AEW weekly, like pay-per-views, it's New Japan. Like, there's enough good wrestling out there that I never feel like I have to rewatch something. Mm-hmm. But there are a few matches that I will go back and rewatch. And this is going to be one of them. Like, some of the other matches I've rewatched, just to throw it out there, the Revolution, Kenny Omega, Hangman, and the Young Bucks match, I've gone back and rewatched. A lot of tag team stuff. Gone back and watched FTR. Well, what were they in? Wow, I've almost forgotten. The Revival versus DIY, Revival American Alpha. Certain matches I go back. Sometimes, I've gone back and watched Ospreay matches. But, like, this is a match that I know sometime in the future I'm going to go, I really like that match. And maybe I'll be, sitting down with my wife or something, and I'm going to say, we're going to watch a great match.
Yeah, and this is definitely going to be one of the most memorable women's matches in U.S. wrestling. It is the most violent women's match that I can remember seeing. So yeah, let's get into it here. Rebel hits Rosa from behind with the crutch to start it off, and Rosa goes after her. Rebel runs out onto the stage. Rosa gets out onto the stage, and Britt spears her through the ropes, and then hits an air raid crash on the stage. And this is the first cover of the match. She gets a 2 count. Britt brings out a chair and mostly ends up getting used on her by Rosa. Rosa hit Britt 4 or 5 times with the chair. Rebel gets hit with it. Rosa throws Britt over the barricade. They fight on the outside. Rosa throws Britt into a chair a few times, sits her down. She goes for a cannonball, but Britt moves out of the way. She cannonballs herself through the chair. They fight back into ringside. Rosa gets sent into the side of the stage. Britt and Rebel set up a table on the outside, so to the right of the ring. For versus hard camera. Britt gets back in the ring. Rosa starts crawling up the stairs, so Britt goes out up onto the stage and gives a curb stomp to Rosa into the top of the stairs. Britt throws like 6 chairs into the ring. Rosa comes up bleeding, and they start fighting in the ring. Britt wedges a chair into the corner. Britt wanted to do the flatliner into the chair, but Rosa does a suplex into the turnbuckle, which was really just like Britt's ankle hitting the bottom turnbuckle. Rebel throws more chairs into the ring. Rosa gets set up onto the top rope, and Britt hits a superplex on Rosa onto a pile of like 8 or 10 chairs. That was insane.
That was great. And the only downside to it for me was that on TNT, that was coming out of picture in picture. So like my TV here at the training center here is pretty small. So I'm like kind of trying to squint. I'm like, what's going on up there? Like I'm trying to get it. And then as soon as it comes back from picture in picture, they just suplex into chairs. And I was like, oh, dang it, I missed something.
Oh, man, you got to watch the fight feed of this match then.
I guess I do.
Because I couldn't even tell where commercial breaks were because they just kept going hard the whole time. More chairs into the ring, superflex onto the chairs, but only gets a 2 count. Rebel throws a ladder into the mix. Rosa gives Britt a bulldog onto the ladder that was still on the ground. Rosa hits a double knees in the corner. Rosa picks up the ladder, wedges it against Britt's face, and drop kicks the ladder into her face. Rosa goes to the outside, pulls out a table. Britt is bleeding like crazy. Rosa leans the ladder up against the bottom rope. She bites Britt in the face. Britt gives Rosa a flatliner onto the ladder. Britt starts going up top. Rosa runs after her, gives Britt a Death Valley driver onto the ladder that was leaned up against the bottom rope. Rosa covers. Britt kicks out at 2. Rosa sets up a chair in the middle of the ring. Britt ends up hitting a DDT onto the chair and then a curb stomp onto the chair. Rosa kicks out at 2. Britt is just covered in blood all over, and Rebel gives Britt a bag. She dumps thumbtacks all over the center of the ring. Rebel saves Britt from a powerbomb. Rebel is then sent to the outside and sent through the table on the outside, but Britt ends up getting powerbombed onto the tacks anyways. Britt kicks out at 2, and then Britt gets on the lockjaw. Rosa rolls Britt back onto the thumbtacks to get out of the hold. Britt is still bleeding like crazy. There are puddles everywhere. Britt drags Rosa out onto the apron. She tries to set Rosa up for a power bomb onto the table that Rosa had set up on the floor earlier, but Rosa reverses it, hits the Thunder Fire Driver off the apron, through the table, and gets the victory. This match was nuts, and one thing I have to say, it didn't feel like them setting up spots. It felt them trying to hurt each other, and it just felt like a giant fight.
Yes, absolutely correct. That's actually a really good way to put it. Like, it didn't feel like they were going from spot to spot. It just kind of felt like they hated each other, and you were just watching this play out. And that's something to be noted, I think, about this match, was not just the lengths they put themselves through, but also like just purely their performance. Like, this was really amazing. You expect one, for me, nothing less from Thunder Rosa. I think Britt Baker was kind of the X factor here. If anything were to, I don't want to say go wrong, but I think if any aspect of this match were to kind of be maybe not the quality that it ended up being, you might put it on Britt Baker, and not because she's bad at all. I mean, I think her character development is second to none. I think her wrestling is something that's been improved. Let's say that. And this match was like proving that 100%, because when she first showed up in AEW, she was good, I think. But like this match, like just her performance, her facials, everything, I was just like, she's actually like freaking amazing. She's really, really good. I'll tell you what, man, she came off like a superstar. They both did. But like when she kicked out of, what move was it? There was a kick out at 2. Oh, the power bomb and the thumbtacks. When she kicked out of that, I was like, oh, hold up, never mind. Like, she's taken this to another level. Mm-hmm. At that moment, because I kind of bid on that false finish, honestly, especially with the thumbtacks, right? I'm like, all right, this makes sense. Thunder Rosa's, just a little bit more hardcore. But when Britt kicked out of the powerbomb on the tacks, I was like, never mind. Like, they're both at this extremely high level. That, the driver off the apron onto the table, I was just like, one person in particular, guess who, Britt Baker, is probably dead. Like, that just looked so gnarly. It didn't look safe, and I hope everyone is okay.
I watched closely. Rosa protected the hell out of Britt.
Oh, of course she did, because she's my favorite ever, and I love her. So, like, yeah, of course she did. But, like, in the moment, you watch that moment, and especially as the camera pulled away and, like, Britt was, like, halfway under the ring because of the angle, I was just like, oh, man, it's over. And for a second, I almost forgot it was Falls Count Anywhere. So she gets down there, and that's where the match ended, was out there by the table. Mm-hmm. And it just made it hit even harder, was, them counting her out right there, just laying in her blood. Or not counted her out, I'm sorry, but counted the pin. So, yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to say more about this. I mean, other than what's already been said and what we said at the beginning of the show. Both women came out looking like superstars, and it's easily my favorite women's match in recent memory, if not in the conversation for one of my favorite ever.
Yeah, definitely number one in AEW.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I tell you what, like, just as a side note, and I don't mean to like sit here and like simp for my homegirl, but like, does it feel like their women's division has just continued to elevate since Thunder Rosa's been around? Thunder Rosa is the bomb, and I think she is having a serious impact here. So, like, let's sign her ASAP as soon as this NWA contract is over.
Yeah, she's definitely come in as, like, the most consistent wrestler. I'm surprised, given some of the other ladies that they have brought in that just haven't been as consistent. Like, I was going to think that Diamante and Ivelisse were going to elevate the women's division more, and we haven't really seen much of them. Also, like, some of their matches were not that good. So that was kind of a disappointment, because I figured those two were going to be kind of like, okay, you bring in Thunder Rosa, you bring in Ivelisse and Diamante, you have like three really talented and Ivelisse and Diamante experienced, and Thunder Rosa, given that she's only been wrestling for 5 years, maybe 6 years, versus Ivelisse has been like for 18 years. Right. Thunder Rosa is amazing given her level of experience. Britt Baker is obviously getting there, even though she is obviously, the green is starting to wear off, but she has not been wrestling for that long either. So I guess we'll see. And then I mean, one thing that we're going to have to see at some point, once kind of everything is roughly back to normal, is we're going to have to see a lot of cuts from people from AEW, because AEW is kind of bloated, and there's talent that just does not live up to the level that AEW needs.
Yeah, I'm just, as you said that, I started thinking a little bit more about the division. I do think that cuts are possible, but I also think between AEW Dark Elevation, Dynamite, and I believe it's still in the cards. I mean, I don't know if they would make Dark, their second network show, but there is still plans, I understand, for a second show. So, I mean, they might not. I mean, they might not need to make cuts, in my opinion. Not everyone has to be on all the time. And I mean, even if now, and I don't have all the background information, but even now, if you look at, for instance, like NXT's women's division, there are people on there that you would not recognize 100%. Like, you would sit there and be like, who are they and when have they ever been on a product? When have they been on NXT or in something on YouTube, right? And they haven't. So, like, they're just there in the training center, but they're under NXT contract. So, I mean, they might not need to make cuts. I think where they need to make changes is just who they're promoting and who they're putting out there and saying, because, part of wrestling is scripted, right? So you can take anybody. You could take Dani Jordan, right, who's great, but you could take her and put her on TV right now, and commentary makes her the biggest deal since like sliced bread, right? Even if she's not. Like, part of wrestling is telling us a lie, right? It's made up. So like, you just need to tell us the right people. You need to put the right people on TV and tell us how amazing they are. Don't put, Jade or, no offense, Red Velvet, but, her or Nyla, and put them up there and they'd be like, they've been wrestling 20 years and they are, in fact, factually the greatest women's wrestler in the world, because they're not. And it's obvious in the ring that they're not. But if they do that with Rosa and Serena Deeb, like, I believe you. So I think it's more about making sure you're putting the right women in those positions to succeed.
Yeah. So I guess it's going to depend on what format Dark is going to take post COVID once they are not in Daly's place permanently. Because basically they would film one match before Dynamite and then film 2 matches after Dynamite. So, I mean, you got an extra hour of audience. They're not going to film the number of matches that they do now in front of a live audience. So what do you do at that point? Do you have some sort of location that you film your second show with no audience, or a planted audience, or something like that? I don't know.
That's a good point. That's true that they have had a little bit more with COVID and, being in Daly's place all the time. They do have a little bit more opportunity to put more matches, give people more experience and ring time. So that's actually a fair point you make. And now that's kind of got my wheels spinning. I wonder if Dark Elevation, maybe it's coming in to serve that kind of purpose. Once we go back to non-COVID, more traditional wrestling schedule, live and touring around everywhere, maybe Elevation is the place that's going to absorb those matches. And maybe Dark goes back to regularly scheduled 1-hour programming.
Right. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know where they film those. That's the thing. Anything else you want to cover before we wrap it up this evening?
I don't believe so. Just want to, final closing notes. I've said it 100 times already, but if you've not seen this week's Dynamite, please, please, please go out of your way to watch the lights out unsanctioned match between Britt Baker, DMD, and Thunder Rosa. You will not be disappointed. And I will also throw this out there. I know it's probably not everyone's cup of tea, especially the way we've described it. Yes, there are thumbtacks. Yes, there is blood. Yes, there are some pretty gnarly looking drivers and ladders and all that stuff. But I think it rode the line. I don't think it was too grotesque or over the top. Even if you don't like this kind of match in general, please seek this one out, give it a watch. And I mean, if you don't like it, you don't like it. But I think that there was a lot of good to this match that superseded just the hardcore aspects.
Then I got a topic here to talk about real quick. There's always a lot of talk of what does AEW have to do to gain the next million viewers, and does a match like this turn them off from that? But while I've been listening to a lot of people discuss that topic, the question comes to mind is, does AEW care, or do they need the next million? They're getting good money from TNT. TNT is happy with the numbers. If they hang around, if they hang around 800,000 to 1 million viewers every week, do they care? As long as they're not losing viewers, does it matter? Do they necessarily have to grow?
I mean, it's a good question. I think that one of the things that I recently heard that springs to mind when you say this is I think there was a series of tweets from a former WWE writer slash producer, and he was talking about how TV execs, in his experience, really, really don't care for wrestling, and how it's really, honestly, a fight almost all the time to keep pro wrestling on TV because, in a sense, I mean, I know we are talking as huge fans, we're talking to an audience of fans, so it's hard for us to wrap our mind around sometimes, but there still is some sort of weird bias or stigma with pro wrestling, and it seems like a lot of old white guys, I'm just assuming here, but just old white guys sitting at these TV companies don't really want wrestling, right? Like, the wrestling has to really perform in order to maintain its spot on national TV. I think AEW is doing that, but I think the better they do with their numbers, the better for us as fans and for these companies and their continued existence, essentially, not just their existence, but their, showing on national TV. So, I mean, I do think that AEW is probably pretty passionate about growing those numbers. But it doesn't seem like they are at the behest or the cost of really writing a love letter to wrestling fans, right? We know that AEW is doing almost everything they can, from what it seems, to please their fans, make their fans happy. Not just writing for us, of course, but like definitely they're responsive to their fans' feelings, I think. And they pay off and reward long-term storytelling, good booking. So if they thought that this match was going to turn off viewers, they still did it, right? Like, they made that choice, and I'm happy that they made that choice as a fan. But I do think that they need to be in search of those numbers, because I think that wrestling is just one of those things. You can get a sitcom or some crappy drama that's going to get canceled after 2 seasons to take this spot pretty quickly. So wrestling and wrestling companies, I think, need to be fighting for this. So I think the viewership numbers are important. But I'm really glad they didn't say, hey, this is going to turn too many people off, right? And in AEW's defense, from what I've seen so far, it does feel like TNT is committed, at least for the time being. Whoever is making those decisions is committed to seeing AEW through at least some time, and their deal includes a third hour. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how it goes. I do think this is the kind of thing that could be divisive among new fans, but right now I think AEW is primarily concerned with making sure their fans get something great out of the product.
Yeah. As far as ratings this week, they were up a little bit. They were up about 25,000 from the previous week. The previous week was 743. This week is 768 as far as 768,000 viewers for that. But the overall total between NXT and AEW down quite a lot. Sitting at 1.36 million viewers, down from the high a couple weeks ago of 1.6. So, I guess we'll see how it continues on. A lot of people are talking about how daylight savings comes into play as well, because people are staying out later while the as the sun is up, and people kind of adjusting their schedules to take advantage of that type of stuff. So that could also have come into play, people coming in later in the second hour. I don't have the hour by hours, so I'm not sure if that was the case or not, but I guess we will see going forward into the summer months. The summer tends to be like a little bit of a lull anyways, because people are out later, and especially those of us in the US, when we get into June and it doesn't get dark until 9:30, So,
yeah, exactly.
All right. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks to everybody who was in the live chat. We actually had quite a few an active chat today. Good to see everybody there, both on Twitch and on YouTube. Thanks for following us over to the new YouTube stream that unfortunately had to be created because it's just a pain in the butt, but it is what it is. If you're listening to this as a podcast, we do this show live on Twitch and on YouTube, so you can follow the links in the show notes to the channels. Subscribe, follow. It's subscribe on YouTube. It's follow on Twitch, so do those. There's a link to our Discord in the show notes as well. You can come hang out. There's a few different topics from all of my other projects as well. Come hang out and talk. And if you have any comments, questions, feedback, you can send those to eric@thatswrestling.com. You can snag the RSS feed at thatswrestling.com as well. Follow us on Twitter at thatswrestling1 with the number 1. So for Caleb Johnson, my name is Eric LaRoche, and we will see you next time on That's Wrestling. See you later, guys.